Ladies and gentlemen, the chess world is never short of crazy stories, interesting dramas, and wild sagas. And today is no different. Over the past few days, as the Grand Prix has been going on, and Hikaru has secured that second candidate spot along with Ricard Rapport, something was going on in China. Ding Liren was looking to meet the criteria to be the replacement for Sergei Karyakin, given that he has been banned for 6 months from competitive chess. Now, how is Ding Liren going to do that? Well, FIDE designated that spot, Karyakin's spot, as controversial as it is, will go to the highest rated player as of May 1st, 2022, who has played 30 games in the recent year. Ding Liren has not had that opportunity because he's been restricted due to, obviously the whole coronavirus situation where he is living until now. They have organized a quadruple round-robin event in Hangzhou, China. Ding is going to play against 3 talented Chinese grandmasters, a couple guys in their early mid-20s who are close to about 2,600, and then he is going to play 6 games against Wei Yi, talented Chinese grandmaster, 2,700, and then he's going to play 12 games in the qualifier for the Asian Games. It's insane. Today, I'm going to take you through the beginning of his journey. He has now played 4 rounds in this event in Hangzhou. He is going to play 12 games total over 8 days, no rest days. All right, all these guys have come to brawl with him because they can get some, valuable rating points off the guy. And basically, if you go to the website 2700 Chess, 2700 Chess, you see the live ratings. Right now, Ding Liren needs to play his games and not lose more than about 20 points. So if he's 2780, 2790. Chances are that once he gets these games done, he will qualify. This is huge. We're going to kick things off with his game against Li Di, whose name actually kind of is a shortened form of Ding Liren. It's kind of funny. Li Di is a very strong player. I've watched him go up the rankings over several years, and this game is going to give you some respect for him, trust me. So we have a 4 knights English. Ding plays e4, which is definitely a sideline. It's far more common to play e3 looking for d4 and g3, try to play bishop g2. E4 locks the structure, and Ding really sends the game out of theory early with d3, h3. These moves control the light squared bishop. H3 doesn't allow bishop g4, and then Ding just plays bishop e2 and castles. Now you might ask, why did Li Di play bishop c5? Like he just played bishop b4. Well, you play this move because you kind of want to do this, but if white puts all his pawns on light squares, you very quickly bring the bishop back, play a5 so b4 is never a concern, and this bishop is very strong. I mean, let's just call it how it is. The bishop on c5 does a very good job controlling this diagonal, and for that reason, Ding actually invites an exchange with bishop e3. Now, if black does this, it's just not good for black, because black can't get into the middle, black can't get into the middle, this light squared bishop is quite bad, and this opens the f-file. Every time a pawn moves, whether it's up or diagonally, because they can't go backwards, in case you forgot, things open up, the board changes, so the rook here will be very powerful, and for that reason, Li Di doesn't do that. He's just continuing to keep this pressure. Again, Ding Liren is not taking because this would give black dominant control of the center. And here Ding plays bishop d1 and puts his bishop on c2. Absolutely fascinating idea. Looks like it does absolutely nothing. But I think maybe he wants to put his knight on e2. I think that's the idea. I think in the long run, he wants to put his knight here and then maybe play d4, and then the bishop is supporting the pawn. So the bishop was not supporting the pawn, so he reroutes the bishop, right? And then here the position begins exploding. Li Di sees what's coming, and he's not a fan, so he drives the knight out to h5, drives this knight into d4, and he is ready to scrap with Ding Liren. He trades off the bishop, Ding does, and puts his knight back on e2. And now he's going to kick this knight out with g4, put the knight on g3, and get an overwhelming pawn rush. Li Di kind of sees this coming as he pushes the pieces back, and he's like, uh-oh, kind of got myself in a bad spot here, because, for example, if you play like king h8, white goes g4 and the knight is stuck. So what is black going to do, as Ding Liren's threats are very clearly g4, f4, bulldoze you on that side of the board, and here we go. Well, he plays b5. Oh my, he is not even addressing the move g4. What? His knight is stuck. He's like, I don't give a damn. B takes c4. Give that candidate spot to me. I'm about to beat Ding Liren. I'm about to beat a 2799. Sacrificing a full knight and then playing the incredible move d5. He's not even interested in taking either of the pawns. He is reinforcing his c4 pawn. If Ding Liren takes this, then black uncorks, rook takes knight, knight takes rook, and the very chill rook e8. With the incoming assault, queen h4, bishop d6, and these bishops laser beam Ding. I mean, Li Di is winning despite being down a full rook. That is insane. It's -2 despite black being a full rook down. This is crazy. Ding Liren has to not lose rating while he's playing these games. So what does he do? He begins rock solid defense. He plays f4, but d3 comes in. I mean, this is unbelievable. Ding's up 2 points of material, but he's losing. He's trying his best to consolidate. e5, counter shot. Now, black can come in toward h4, or he can go to b6. They both look appetizing because they both look to infiltrate in various directions. He chooses queen b6, and then bishop c5 and bishop c6. I mean, can you really argue with how incredibly strong this black position looks? Can you really say that it's felt that Ding is up material? Not really. The knights come forward. Ding is looking for some counterplay, but his knights are sort of stranded on the edge of the board. In comes d2. Li Di is going to get at least a little bit of material here, but Ding likes that. He likes this because now he himself gets to create counterplay. Queen takes c4. A full rook is being offered. I apologize. Full rook is being offered, but now bishop b3, and he's threatening mate in 2. So mate in 2 is threatened. Queen f7. This is under attack. d1 queen is coming in. Li Di offers a queen trade and gives away his bishop, but now the rook takes the bishop. Okay. Instant replay. White gives up a rook, doesn't take the bishop because he can't, attacks f7, doesn't trade queens, takes the bishop. Black takes the bishop with the rook. Now we have this and this. You've got to take the bishop though. Rook takes b2 because if you take, black gets a second queen. Ding has to protect himself. And now queen b6. Apparently, if Ding Liren retreats to c3 here, it's +5. Queen c3, queen g3, going over to g7. But Ding misses it. He trades queens thinking this endgame is winning for him. And here we begin a pawn rush. f6, right? You have to chip away. In this position, apparently, b5 is winning for black. The point is that if you take, black runs the pawn. If you go attack the rook, you sack the rook, and then you play a2 and black is winning. I think they both must have overlooked something here. Knight d6 allows a3, and if you play knight back to f3 looking to win the d2 pawn, there is just absolutely wild move here, rook d8. The rook is hit from both sides, and it's also pinned to the king. If you play knight d6, a2, and the rook is getting through, right? I mean, the queen is getting through. So Li Di is like on the verge of beating Ding here. He just has to find the accurate kind of knockout with, you know, he's got like almost no time on the clock. He begins the pawn rush a little bit later. He plays b5 now. And here comes the a pawn. Oh my goodness. Rook f1, rook b3 check, king g2. He sacrifices and he plays a2. But knight c8. And Ding Liren is just in time. It's a mating net. It doesn't matter if you're on the verge of promotion because a1 queen doesn't matter. d1 queen doesn't matter. You're mated. Knight c8 and Li Di resigns. Li Di instead of a2 could have played rook b2 first and then just walked the king up, right? He could have gone something like this and then apparently played rook d4. Knight c8 in this case is met with d1 queen check. But he had like no time. And instead he played a2 and Ding Liren was able to get this configuration and he gets a win. Next game I'd like to show you. He's white now, Ding Liren. He was white, I apologize. He's white against Xu Zhangyu, who's a 2564 rated GM. And if you're wondering at any point why the higher 2600 rated players aren't featured, the thing is that China has some super GMs. They might have not wanted to play. I mean, China might have invited a couple of guys who are, talented, maybe not 2650. And it would be kind of a cool opportunity to play Ding, and it's really up to Ding. I mean, Ding's in some trouble in some of these games. So, yeah, I mean, it's who they invited, right? So, in this game, Ding chooses not to engage in a complicated King's Indian, instead playing like Bishop e2, a little bit more solid. And we have a double fianchetto with Queen c2. 1 second. You all might hear my radiator momentarily. I can turn it off from my phone. It's the only cool feature of this Nest thing. So I'm going to tell you, the reason why the house gets cold in the middle of my recording is sometimes we let the doggy outside and it blows cold air in and then the house thinks it's cold. But in here it's really hot. So I don't want you to have to sit through hissing. I know you complained that you don't hear the... Trust me, if you go back, you'll hear it as I'm talking. It kind of winds back there. E6, B4. Now, in this position, White is obviously looking for queenside expansion. It's really not any secret here. White wants to do some stuff over on this side with bishop b2. Ding really goes all out on the queen side here with the space. He's controlling the black position, but black is not really worse. I mean, in chess, just because you have a bit more space and you're more active doesn't mean you're winning. You're better, but the only way to get to this position is to break through at some point, and black actually puts up the wall himself on c5. Ding begins chopping it down, and then plays e4, looking for e5, d5. Zhu Shengyu here plays a6 and allows Ding to get a really comfortable center bind. But the thing is, as appetizing as g4 looks, this would be 2 games in a row that Ding Liren would be met with trapping a knight on h5 and bulldozing counterplay down the middle of the board. However, he absolutely could do this and just give up the knight and then play h6 or something. He chooses not to engage. He plays rook e1. He's like, look, I learned last game that I think a nice, comfortable positional bind is a little bit better. And this game, Ding is controlling the action. Last game was completely nuts. Li D was like, I'm not going to let you get into the candidates. I'm going to take all your points. This game, Ding has very much his style of position. He has a good bind. Black has a very clear weakness on e6, kind of scattered forces on the king side. Let's see if Ding is able to put this all together. All right. Knight goes to e5. Queen e8, queen e3. I mean, his position is so well coordinated, such a well-oiled machine, right? Rook c8, and yeah, Ding begins the destruction process. So he has now doubled black's h-pawns, left black with an isolated e-pawn. The king is wide open. And here, active intentions are best. Like, you can go for this and just try to get to the g7 bishop. Ding plays f3 and restricts the knight and the bishop from this diagonal in the e4 square. And then he plays knight e2 and tries to go this way. But Zhu Shengyu's not sitting tight. I mean, he's trying to create a little bit of counterplay. Gets his knight to d5. Look at this knight dance, right? From c5 all the way around to d5. Really shows you how horrible knights are, like in some capacity. Like, you want your knight here, you gotta do 3 moves. Just crazy, right? But could be worth it if it's if it's worth the defense. h6, rook d4, bishop f8. Now's the moment of truth. All right, Ding can play rook h4 here, give up the bishop, and then potentially go for this because he gets in completely. Now, I'm not exactly sure why Ding did not play rook h4. I don't have his personal contact information. Maybe he didn't like it because he didn't exactly say a way in. Apparently, rook h4, you can just go like this. I mean, you can literally just play rook h4, rook h3, rook g3. Ding thinks that trading the bishops first is the way to go and doesn't see an opportunity to go attack the king and instead plays c6. Now, you can't take on c6. It looks like you can. You can't really do that because this queen goes here and then queen h6. And I mean, again, the black king is completely defenseless. But Zhu Shengyu here does a good job. I mean, kind of consolidates, ends up winning the pawn on c6. And Ding's advantage is not really as strong as it was. Queen c3. Zhu Shengyu does a great job. He's gotten rid of the c-pawn, so his queen and rook coordinate, right? And he's just trying to trade queens with the guy. So queen f2, rook f7, Ding still attacking, king g8. But now you're not going to win this game by checkmate. Look at this. Queen sack by black. Gets the rook down to the c-file. I mean, and now we have an endgame. Here's the problem with beating a 2800 or not losing to a 2800. Just because you survive for a bit, it doesn't mean that they're not going to come back with a second wind, a third wind, a fourth wind. Beating or drawing these guys is borderline impossible. And Ding knows that. He knows that he has the better structure here, the 3 on the split 2. He can pick one of them up and try to advance. Rook c2, king g3. But this game, his opponent was doing a much better job keeping up with him on the clock. I think the 3rd or 4th round, Ding ended up with 30 minutes to 1, which just, in a 90-minute game, that's not going to work. So Ding does get the a-pawn, but here comes counterplay, right? Black does end up trying to get to the g2 pawn. But to do that, he allows the knight and the rook to bully him a little bit. The pawn is still defended. Ding is choosing not to take because he doesn't want to lose this. Thinks he's going to be able to do it in the long run. Black king gets a little active. Ding decides, all right, I'm going to give you g2. I'm going to take b5. Zhu Shengyu plays z4, joining up the pawn and the bishop. Ding is like, if I take this, I'm not sure I can win this. So I'm going to play f4. All right, I'm giving my opponent a pass pawn. I got to take risk. That's the only way I can win this position. And I think I'm going to be sharper in the long run. Now, obviously, black doesn't want his bishop taken, but he has the option between bishop f1 and allowing a check and bishop h1, right, protecting the pawn. He chooses to go here. Check here, check here. We're not going to have a draw, all right? No draw. This is a draw now if Ding plays it. He plays knight g6 instead and allows the pawn to get even closer to promotion. Ding's really playing with fire here. I mean, the pawn's a square away. Pawn's a square away from promotion. Check. King h7. But as it turns out, Ding Liren has outcalculated his opponent. He plays rook d6. He also could have played f7. But the idea is all the same. f7, e1 queen, and apparently you can sack the rook. Because what happens is you make a queen with check, and it's mate. It's mate no matter where the king goes. So Ding does it in a slightly different way, but you can allow black to queen. I mean, this man is allowing a queen promotion because he's calculated the fact, after this repetition of moves, to gain some time, he's calculated that the pawn is forced through. The pawn gets a check, the knight will come in, pawn check, and he queens. And every move must be check. If it was black's move here, black wins because rook and queen. That's what always happens. When there's two kings out and both sides queen, whoever checks. And Ding swarms the black king. And it's either the king goes to the side and gets mated or comes back to the middle and now gets laddered and walked of shame to the other side of the board. And if you block, I just take. And if you take that, I check you. And the black king can only go here. But he can't go here because knight d3. So king d5, and Ding finds queen b7. If you play king d6, I go check, you take my knight, I pin you, and I win your queen. Or you go to c5. You cannot go here, you cannot go here. You cannot go here because fork. Black resigns. Yeah, because anywhere black moves the king, there is either a knight fork, or you take the knight, and I go like this. If king d7, check here, check here. This man, Ding Liren, calculated out a position where he allows a promotion and belligerently forces the king out into the open, sacks his rook for the bishop, and knight e5 wins the game. I mean, are you kidding me? Yo, this is crazy, and this is only the second game. Are you bored? You better not be bored. You know, viewer retention on YouTube on average is about 48, 50%. Means people are going to fall off 2 games out of 4. I mean, you bozos are really not entertained by this guy. He's a level above. All right? And he's never done with the game. He had one chance, he screwed it up, and now he comes right back. Now, let's see how Ding Liren plays with black. This is the hardest part. This is going to be Ding's hardest part. You gotta make draws with black when you're 2800 against other 2800s. But what do you do when you play 2590s? You can't make draws. So what do? You play a Rogozin. Bishop to b4. All right? So he's now playing Bai Jinchi. Jinchi Bai is very strong. He's won, I think, National Open in Las Vegas. I mean, he's an extremely strong player. Jinchi Bai plays Bishop g5, and Ding plays Knight bd7. So he's trying to play this more like a semi-Slav, except here's c5, so it's not really a semi-Slav. We have takes, Bishop d3. We kick the bishop out of the middle. Sorry, we kick it out of this middle, but it stays around, and now queen a5 targets this. He defends. They both castle. These bishops look good, but everything's defended. Everything's fine. And now we have rook e8, protecting against anything going to e4. Knight d2, very interesting move. This has 2 ideas. Number 1, a3, b3, and then destroy this blockade, but also controlling the e4 square, maybe long-term advancement of f3, e4. Ding plays g6, bishop takes, and now his knight has to come back. That's kind of the drawback of g6, is that you've lost the guard of the knight, so your knight has to come back. Now it's white's turn to kind of prove the initiative, right? He's given black the bishop pair. What is Jinchi Bai going to do here? Rook e1, f3. Everything that I said. Ding is ready. He's like, come and get me. a3. Do I want to trade bishops for knights? You see, Ding could play bishop f8 here. He could play bishop d6, but then comes b3 or b4, and white's entire setup is justified. The bishop pair is good. But in chess, there's something I like to call superseding concepts. The bishop pair is good versus the white initiative is too strong, right? Sometimes when you're low rated, you think, oh, bishop pair is good. That's it. I'm so smart. But in this case, you actually have to give up the bishop pair. Because what happens now is white has to lock his structure. White can also take with the queen, and maybe we get knight a4, and this pawn is weak, right? So bc3, and Ding has found himself a target. and he has found himself a target for the rest of the game. He will go rook b6, rook b2, or rook a6, rook a3, and these pawns are where he's going to try to break through. What is black going to try to do? Black's going to try, what is white going to do? White's going to try to defend the queen, this side of the board, and play e4. I mean, Jin Shibai has been building the entire game for this move. It's been an entire battle to get this move on the board, right? So takes, and Ding plays bishop c6. That doesn't look possible because the move d5 looks like a fork. But when you have rooks on the same file and they're blocked by a pawn, make sure your rook is sufficiently defended because this pawn guarding this is an illusion. You just take because this rook does not have sufficient guards. Okay, so you cannot do that. Instead, Jin Shibai plays e5, locking the structure, but allowing this bishop to come alive. And now Ding Liren has a very clear target in the middle of the board, which he can take and take. Now, the position is still in the balance, okay? These are 2,600 rated GMs. Ding Liren isn't going to just melt through them like, like a hot knife through butter. He's going to have to slowly equalize, which he's done. But now he has to take a risk. I mean, for example, Ding might play queen d5 here and threaten mate. One of you might play, I don't know, rook f1 and hang mate. Bai Jinshi is going to play knight f3. And now it's not really clear what black's next move is. If you play queen f7 looking to damage the structure, then knight g5. If you play queen f5 looking to attack the knight, I defend everything. It's a battle of dark squares versus light squares, right? Every piece is on a dark square because this bishop just can't be involved in the game. I mean, it's a complex position. Ding sacks the c-pawn here. And his idea is to force white into a position where this bishop must be protected at all times. If you play bishop f4 here, I think what Ding intended to do was uncork rook f8, threatening to take and then take the knight. And if white plays bishop h6, there is an incredible move here, g5, which is just bananas. Point is that if you take, there's this. If bishop g5, there's this, and the bishop is trapped. But suddenly, Stockfish finds d5. Otherwise, you move the bishop, you lose the knight. And if anybody's confused, by the way, why you wouldn't take the rook, I take with check. Again, I take the bishop. So I get 2 pieces for the rook. And Stockfish in this position after bishop g5, h6 finds this. And claims that white is better in this endgame. White is a pawn up after all. I seemingly think this was Ding's idea, but Jin Shibai doesn't see the Stockfish line. And instead, we have ourselves an endgame where the pressure of the rook and the bishop will probably pay off. These pawns are split, and now let's watch the 2800 go to work. Brings the king, targets the pawn, targets the rook, forces the rook into a bit of a strange square, a little passive, king comes active, right? Now, if you just sit around, black's gonna go king d4, b6, bishop d3, take this pawn, go take that pawn and win the game. So he tries to go for a rook endgame. Rook in 3 versus rook in 4. The problem is his opponent is 2800. And just like I told you the prophecy of the other endgame, Ding Liren gives a check, puts the rook on the back rank to protect everybody. His king is more active than white's king. The king goes to the optimal square a4, so now the rook cannot move off the third rank. a5, b5, white resigns. Because if you just come back, I mean, I can play b4 and maybe try to win this endgame with my passed pawn, but I can also just go around and try to take your a-pawn. And if you go to c7, I will take, you will take, but let's be serious. My pawn is significantly closer, and I have a second one as backup. So a5, b5, and after 46 moves, Ding Liren shows the difference between 2600 and 2800 again. Non-stop pressure in the middle game, has to take a risk at some moment to create himself a winning opportunity. That first game was all risk. Second game, he had to take a risk in the end game. Here, he had to take a risk in that middle game position, sack a pawn and go for something. Stockfish would have refuted him. But he's playing a human being. And now we move on to the fourth game of the day. Ding Liren is now 3 out of 3 in this event. He's black once again against Li Di because they're flipping colors, right? Li Di's looking for revenge, and Ding goes for another Ragozin. Back-to-back Ragozins. Bishop g5, h6 this time. So Li Di probably was like, ooh, if bishop g5, he's going to play this move, right? But Ding Liren knows a couple of things about openings. We have a bishop into knight, e3, all seen before. In fact, Ding Liren has played this whole line twice in the past couple of months, maybe the last year, in these online events. Queen e7 here is the main line by black. Ding plays the far more rare but provocative queen f5. It's provocative because the queen will just get hit and have to go over here like in the Scandinavian defense, and it's not really clear what the queen is doing. If you say Gotham, it's going here. Not really. Is it riding on the back of the bishop? Sure. You know. ED4. And now we have a bishop pair for black, an isolated pawn for white, and a pretty imbalanced position. Something that the Rogozin usually leads to, right? So Ding takes the d-file, puts his knight in front of his pawn. Maybe he's going to go this way or this way. White kicks out the bishop. Knight f6. And Li Di plays knight e4. His idea of knight e4 is that if black just lazily trades and is like, I have the bishop pair, I'm so smart, it's the same thing that happens last game. Same exact thing. We just saw this. Ding Liren had the bishop pair against Jin Shibai, but white was far more active, right? And white controls the black position. You can't develop this light-scored bishop at all. So instead of doing that, he decides to play bishop e7, so at least when the trade happens, he can activate his bishop. And his light-scored bishop is being offered as a tribute. He wants to trade, because if too many pieces get traded, all of a sudden, white is left with a weakness in the middle of the board. So Ding Liren is playing this in a smart way. Knight c5, takes, bishop e8, and Li Di's taking no risks. He is building the 3-on-2, the queenside majority, which obviously will mean that if the pawns get traded, white will get a passed pawn. Takes, and Ding trades off the rooks as well. Now, between all these games, Li Di seems to be the guy. I mean, this guy seems to be playing many points above his rating. I'm going to go look this up, actually. I probably should have looked this up earlier. But I think Li Di is like 20. Yeah, Li Di is 22 years old. And if you look at his rating progress chart, he's at his highest rating basically ever. He hasn't had too many chances to play, but like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the guy was 2480. So he's clearly getting better, and the Chinese grandmasters haven't had too many opportunities to travel. This guy's put some problems for Ding Liren with white and with black. I mean, this is not a position that white should lose. But here, Ding Liren uncorks Mr. 2800 again. If I can't beat you in the opening or the middle game, and I can't put pressure on you in the end game, I'm going to put pressure on you on the clock. This is a 90-minute game. And now, I'm going to very slowly ask you questions. White here is constantly struggling with the fact that he is slightly better. Yes, you heard that right. You heard that right. I can't speak for Li Di's nerves, but I can speak for my own. Sometimes, when you're in a position where you're beating, and you're comfortably better against such a good player, and they're just playing these moves super fast. You guys know what I'm talking about. You ever get a winning position in a 10-minute rapid game, and then your opponent starts playing instantly? You're like, what the hell is going on? I'm completely winning, but my time is ticking, and now I got 1 minute, and then you throw the game. Then you want to throw your phone or computer or yourself out of a window. Don't do one of those three. You could do the other two. For legal reasons, that's a joke. So, you know, now Ding is just like, he's like, I'm just chilling. I'm just chilling. And then, you know, maybe I'm going to make you blunder this pawn by accident. Oh? What do you think? You want to take that? Queen e4? Okay, knight c5. Now your pawn is gone. Now we have a totally symmetrical position. All right. You're trying to get me to take? No. What? Ding. It's completely... Ding, just take. It's a draw. You have the same pawns. Just take. Ding's like, nope. I don't believe my opponent can beat me or even survive this. Okay. Li Di's just making moves. Ding offers a queen trade. All right. Now, if you really want to make a draw here, you swap the queens. But... the black king is more active. We just saw that what happens when a black king gets so active. And what happens if you know, in a perfect situation, somehow we get this and we pick up this pawn. In this case, there's knight c5. But you get what I'm saying. So Li Di decides, I'm still trying to attack. Ding's like, all right, attack who? Attack who? I am literally the longer form of your name. I have more letters. I have more elo. Queen before check, queen e7. Trade queens with me, man, so I can activate my king. Li Di's like, oh my god, something's going wrong. All right, let's trade queens, but I'm going to take with my a-pawn. King e7. f3, I'm bringing my king as well. Knight I'm bringing my king as well, but here comes bishop e5. All right, the knight's hit. Knight's got to go. Knight goes back. King d6. Bishop is hanging out on this diagonal. King e5. Knight to a2. And my man Ding Liren here plays a savage move. He plays knight to e2, giving the king a kiss on the cheek. Just kidding. This knight doesn't see this king. And the knight on a2 is stuck. And this entire time, Ding has played faster than Li Di. So Ding's up time. 30 minutes to 1. White has to play this endgame with a minute on the clock. How's he going to do it? Ding Liren is thinking, I want a candidate spot. I got to get in here and take these pawns. King e3. And now Ding's like, well, I got the center under control. I got the queen side under control. I always say on my Twitch streams, if you can control all three sides of the board, you win the game. So now Ding is looking to control the king side as well. Li Di's clock is ticking. He's trying to defend himself. He's ready to sack a pawn to check the king and activate his knight. Ding Liren's like, nope. I would rather trade with you and still allow your knight to get active. But now you have really bad weaknesses. Knight g2 is coming, and it's going to be really tough for you to protect yourself here. So knight g2 check, forces the king back. The knight is going to rotate around. Bishop back to d7, and black wins. Black wins. The bishop and the pawn are both under attack. If white plays bishop c4 here, you can just take it and play bishop e8, and this wins. This is good enough. You take this pawn. So if you didn't play b5 here with white, and let's just say you played like king g3, your pawns are just all so weak. I'm going to win one of them. When I win one of them, I'm going to go get the other one. And Ding Liren, after 4 rounds in Hangzhou, is 4 out of 4, and he is the second highest rated player in the world again. If you go to 2700chess.com, this man, Ding Liren, is now rated 2808. Well, actually, it's 2807.9. He is 4 points above Ali Reza. And once Ding plays these games, the games against Wei Yi and the qualifier games to play in the Asian Games, he will have played 30 games by May 1st. And as long as his rating doesn't fall below about 2780, like if it's 2795, he will be the candidate's 8th spot. Crazy. I mean, I've seen debates and discussions about this format. For example, Anish Giri said that it doesn't make any sense that they reinstated a rating requirement. Some of you may not know this, but there has always been a rating qualifier for the candidates. They just choose the person that's the highest rated if they didn't make it any other means. But they removed that this year, and they added an extra spot to the Grand Swiss, which is a new event. So now, instead of just winning it, they give it to 2 people. So why would you give Karyakin's spot to the rated player? If you remove that originally, why not throw in a Grand Prix spot? You know what I mean? Like, why not throw in a 3rd place in the Grand Swiss? I don't know. Fide gonna fide. But I do say I support Ding Liren because this man has had it the worst out of anybody in 2020, 2021, and now this year. And I even have a video on his journey called The Saddest Story in Chess. But now he's back. Crazy. We might see Ding Liren in the candidates after all.